So this is the final piece. It's Carnage took over Deadpool, Darth Maul, and Rocket Raccoon. This is Team Carnage. This is the original. It's just Carnage and Deadpool, who I call Carpool, done with Copic marker, I believe, and Prismacolor marker and pencil. This is the original pencil version. And now we are going to see the process of how I updated this digitally. I'm of course using my Surface Pro 4 and Clip Studio Paint. The first step is I imported the pencil layer and then made a layer on top of it, which is for inking. As you can see, I'm using the G Pen in Clip Studio Paint, which allows the speed and how much pressure you're putting on the pen to determine the line weight. So I'm just using my natural, just however my hand naturally flows to determine the line weight. I'm not putting a whole lot of thought into it, honestly. Really, I don't. The inking on this wasn't really that big of a deal. The coloring I was going to spend a lot more time on the coloring. And really, what's cool is I think I did such a good job on the coloring. I could actually take off the inking layer, and the coloring stands on its own pretty well. I'm doing a couple things with tools, like with the straight line tool for his claws, circle tool. And what I do is add a different layer for those, line it up right, and then I send it down to the layer below. So what I did differently on this piece was I did a whole white layer where I covered the entire, I basically flatted it in white. And this video is just on Carpool here. So I flatted it entirely in white, and then rather than flatting it with his regular costume colors, I then jump straight to shading. And usually, if you see my other videos, I flat it with color and then do shading, but I wanted to really focus on the values and getting the shadows and the highlights right, and then flatting. And I pretty much stuck to that. It's a habit I'm gonna have to break, but I think I made a nice leap forward in this. So with the shadows, this is the first pass. It's like the main shadow, and then that yellow line is the light source. So it's coming from the frontish, rightish down, and it's going to cast that main shadow. Something else I did differently on this piece was I also put, well, it's coming up pretty soon, but this layer here is a deeper shadow. I wanted the light to be pretty bright. So this is just a deeper shadow on it. So that's a separate layer. So I'll do another layer, which is a 25% layer, and both these other two shadow layers are 50%. I'll do a 25% layer, which covers up Carpool here entirely, and that's not something I usually do, but it's something I've been kind of experimenting with. And I talked to, if you see my video, I did an interview with Carlos Mendoza III. He was helping me out with some coloring and just how to understand shading and values and stuff. So he had recommended that I basically pick how dark the room is in a way, and then light on top of it. So that's what you're gonna see pretty soon. Is I'll add a third shadowing layer at 25%. There it is right there. And then I go in and I erase where I want the light to be. And you can see I'm doing just first I'm doing the surfaces that are going to be more glossy, like the leather on his belts, the leather of his buckle, the grenades, the metals. And then for his suit, I wanted a different texture. Even though he's covered with the Carnage symbiote, I wanted a different texture just so it visually would switch things up. So with the suit, I used the soft eraser, and I just erased where I wanted there to be the brightest light, I guess, or less shadow. And then later on I'll put another layer with actual highlights as well. So it's kind of overkill, but again, a lot of this is really just me experimenting. So here I am adding in little nicks, scratches on the suit, just adding easy way to add texture. And that's what I'm doing here again. Just erasing back a lot of the shadow area, wherever I want the light to be hitting. And you, like, this is a little bit different than what I usually do. And I've got a few videos with just that cartoony style of like one shadow layer and one highlight layer and then the flat. So this is a little more in depth. I'd like to be able to do just one shadow layer and have all my values on one layer. I don't think I'm quite there yet. So my next step here is I've got my values in, which I was pretty happy with. And then I'm adding in the flatting of the actual colors of his costume. So it's a symbiote, which, you know, red and black are Carnage's colors, so it works well with Deadpool. Then later on, I added Darth Maul to natural fit too. But I wanted it to look like Deadpool. I adjusted his face the most, but for the most part, I wanted it to be instantly recognizable as Deadpool with like a Carnage face, moreover. And he's got some symbiote tendrils on him, but I didn't want it to go crazy. If you see on Carnage, he has more of the tendrils coming off of him. For this piece, I wanted the tendrils to act differently. I wanted the symbiote to act differently on each character. And if you look at the final piece again at the very end, you'll see the symbiote acts a little bit differently on each character. Alright, so it looks like I'm still flatting, and you can see where I erase the shadow. Like, it's just I throw the colors in and the values are already done. I don't really have to do a whole lot more. It kind of speaks for itself. I do end up doing more because I wanted more of a visual punch, and I wanted some spots to be a little bit brighter, especially on the metals and leathers and stuff. With this piece, there's a lot of red and black for each character. So with Deadpool, I wanted to keep the leathers, the handle right there, his belts, to be brown, just to mix it up a little bit. There's some grays in there I threw, like the Thor's hammer and the Hulk hand and the Wolverine claws are like a pinkish kind of color, just so those stand out. I had to kind of play around with it. The handle of the gun is silver, so I wanted to mix it up, not have so much red and black. I mean, there is, but a little bit less. That's the blue of the mouth. I picked blue for his mouth. Each of the characters has different color glow in their mouth. Alright, here I am adding more highlights. Not just where the light hits, but like I'm actually adding highlights, like it's a brightest spot. On the shinies and leather areas, you'll see like pure white, with a little bit of what it was, the aerosol can, the spray can underneath it, like just to add a little glow. And I'm going in and adding more scratches. The area on the sword, the handle is a different texture. It's like a cloth kind of texture. So that I used a pencil for that. Same thing with the strap on the hammer. So all of these are different textures, and I wanted them to feel and look different. With the symbiote, it's wet and it moves a lot, but I didn't want all four characters to have that look. So adding in some secondary highlights behind him. I think I ended up in the final piece, I changed those to red to suggest that Darth Maul's lightsaber is glowing and hitting him. But I like that secondary light source just to round things out. Oh, and there it is. So that's the final piece. Hope you liked it.